I am Audrey, 32 years old, and lying in a hospital bed with a broken femur, 3 fractured ribs, and a punctured lung after a pickup truck ran a red light. The worst pain, though? My parents and brother James left for their Italian vacation 4 days after my accident. Mom left a voicemail. "We're off to Rome. Do not bother calling us." So I did exactly that. Plus a few other things they never saw coming. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment telling me where you are viewing from and hit subscribe to hear what I did next. To understand why my parents abandoning me in the hospital hit so hard, you need to know our family history. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, the pattern was clear early on. My younger brother James was the golden child, while I was just the reliable daughter expected to achieve without acknowledgement. From childhood, James got the lion's share of attention, praise, and resources. When he struck out at Little League, Dad spent hours practicing with him. When I won the state math competition, Mom skimmed the certificate and asked what was for dinner. This dynamic never changed. It only evolved into something more financially exploitative as we reached adulthood. At 32, I built a successful career as a financial analyst at Morgan Stanley. Through discipline and countless 60-hour weeks, I climbed to a senior position with a salary that allowed me to purchase my downtown apartment and live comfortably. Meanwhile, James floated through life at 29 without direction. Art school dropout, failed startup founder, wannabe musician, unsuccessful day trader. The list of abandoned pursuits grew yearly. Yet Mom and Dad always had another excuse ready. He just has not found his passion yet, or creative types take longer to settle down. The financial imbalance in our family became stark over the past 5 years. When Dad took early retirement and their pension proved insufficient, I stepped in to help with their mortgage payments. What began as temporary assistance evolved into me covering their property taxes, utility bills, car payments, and even their annual vacations. The Italy trip they prioritized over my recovery? I paid $12,000 for those first-class tickets and luxury accommodations. James contributed nothing despite living rent-free in their basement. His occasional odd jobs funded his hobbies while I shouldered the family financial burden. My recent promotion increased my responsibilities and salary, which somehow translated to greater expectations from my family rather than congratulations. My friends saw the pattern long before I allowed myself to acknowledge it. Sarah, my college roommate, confronted me at lunch last year. "Audrey, they are treating you like an ATM, not a daughter." Patricia from work noticed how often I took personal calls from family during office hours, always ending with me transferring money. Even my ex-fiancé, Michael, cited my family dynamic as a reason for our breakup. You will never prioritize our relationship when your family demands everything from you. The examples of their favoritism accumulated over decades. When James turned 16, they gifted him a brand new Jeep Cherokee. For my 16th, I received driving lessons and access to Mom's old station wagon on weekends. During my college graduation from Cornell with honors, they attended only the bare minimum ceremony before leaving early because James had a recreational baseball game across town. When my engagement to Michael ended after 3 years, Mom suggested it happened because men need attention and you focus too much on your career. This despite the fact that my career funded their lifestyle. Last Thanksgiving crystallized the pattern when Mom proudly described James's entrepreneurial spirit to extended family while completely neglecting to mention my recent promotion to senior analyst. For Dad's 60th birthday, I organized and paid for an elaborate celebration at his favorite restaurant. Yet, somehow the family narrative became about how thoughtful James was for creating a slideshow of old photos using my laptop and the software I purchased. Psychologically, this created a troubling pattern in me. My self-worth became tied to achievement and financial generosity. If I could just succeed enough, give enough, perhaps they would finally see me. This desperate need for validation drove me to work harder, earn more, and give more freely, hoping each sacrifice would be the one that finally earned their appreciation. I rationalized their behavior constantly. That is just how family is. Blood is thicker than water. They showed love differently when they were growing up. Every excuse imaginable to avoid confronting the painful truth that the family dynamics were fundamentally unhealthy. The morning of my accident, this dysfunctional equilibrium was firmly in place. I had no idea how completely everything was about to change. Tuesday morning began like any other workday. I woke at 5:30, completed my morning run through the park, showered, and dressed in my charcoal pencil skirt and cream blouse for an important client meeting. The forecast predicted afternoon thunderstorms, so I left early to beat the weather. Travel mug of coffee in hand, briefcase packed with presentation materials for the Weber account. The intersection of Maple and Broadway was usually busy at 7:45. But nothing seemed unusual that morning. I had the green light. My sedan was halfway through the intersection when I glimpsed something in my peripheral vision, a red pickup truck barreling toward me, running the red light. Driver looking down instead of at the road. The impact came with a deafening crash of metal and glass. Physics took over as my car spun violently from the point of impact. The airbags deployed with explosive force, my coffee splashed across the dashboard, and time seemed to stretch and distort. The shattering glass sounded almost musical, tiny fragments catching the morning sunlight like diamond dust before reality crashed back with brutal force. I remember fragments after that. The metallic taste of blood in my mouth. The sharp pain in my leg and chest. The strange angle of my lower body. The smell of gasoline and burning rubber. Someone shouting to call 911. A face appearing at my crumpled window asking if I could hear them. The wail of approaching sirens cutting through my mental fog. The extraction from the vehicle remains a blur of pain and disorientation. Paramedics worked methodically, stabilizing my neck, cutting away the crushed door, carefully transferring me to a backboard. Significant lower extremity trauma, one reported into a radio. Possible pneumothorax, said another. Their calm efficiency suggested serious injuries even before I fully comprehended what had happened. The ambulance ride was a symphony of pain with every bump and turn. The paramedic beside me, Alan according to his name tag, kept talking to keep me conscious. Stay with me, Audrey. Tell me about your job. I tried focusing on his questions rather than the terrifying pain radiating from my leg and chest. Somewhere in that bumpy journey, I asked him to call my parents. He placed my phone on speaker and held it as I drifted in and out of awareness while the call connected. At the hospital, the diagnosis materialized through a flurry of activity. Compound fracture of the right femur requiring immediate surgical intervention with rod placement. 3 broken ribs on my right side. A punctured lung causing breathing difficulties. Severe concussion with temporary memory issues. Multiple facial lacerations requiring stitches, particularly a deep cut along my right cheekbone that would likely leave a permanent scar. The orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Matthews, explained that recovery would take a minimum of 2 to 3 months. The femur is the strongest bone in your body, he said. When it breaks this severely, the healing process cannot be rushed. He outlined multiple surgeries, immediate rod placement to stabilize the bone, followed by potential additional procedures depending on healing progression. Physical therapy would be extensive and painful. I would require significant assistance with daily activities for weeks, possibly months. My parents and James arrived at the hospital late that afternoon, nearly 7 hours after the accident. Mom looked annoyed when she spotted my bandaged face, as though my injuries were inconveniencing her rather than causing me pain. Dad awkwardly patted my non-forehand and asked about insurance coverage before any questions about my condition. James stayed by the door, scrolling through his phone, glancing up occasionally with an expression of boredom. Their visit lasted 22 minutes. I timed it on the wall clock above the door while drifting in and out of pain medication haze. Mom checked her watch repeatedly. Near the end of their brief stay, Dad mentioned their upcoming Italy trip, scheduled to depart Saturday, just 4 days away. We have been planning this for months, Mom said, though I had only finalized and paid for the arrangements 3 weeks earlier at her request. Such bad timing with your accident. Do you think you will have to cancel? I asked, the medication making me more direct than usual. They exchanged glances. James looked up from his phone with sudden interest. Cancel? The trip is completely paid for, he protested. We will figure something out, Dad said vaguely, patting my hand again. Let us see how you are doing tomorrow. They left with vague promises to return the next day, and I sank into uneasy sleep filled with dreams of being trapped in twisted metal while my family took photos in front of the Colosseum. The next morning brought more clarity about my medical situation and my need for support. Dr. Frank, the attending physician, explained that I would need round-the-clock care initially after discharge. You cannot put weight on that leg for at least 6 weeks. Daily wound care for the surgical site is necessary. You will need assistance with bathing, dressing, meal preparation, transportation to medical appointments, essentially all activities of daily living. Nurse Brenda, a motherly woman with salt and pepper hair and gentle hands, became my primary caregiver on the floor. She explained things clearly and treated me with compassion that made my family's behavior seem even more stark in contrast. My roommate Kelly, recovering from a gallbladder removal, offered emotional support from the adjacent bed. My sister took a week off work when I had this minor procedure, she mentioned. I cannot imagine family not being there for something as serious as your injuries. I found myself hoping that my parents would recognize the severity of my condition and postpone their trip. They had to see that I needed them now. Surely this was exactly when family should rally around you, right? My parents returned the day after my first surgery, walking into my hospital room around noon. I was still groggy from pain medication, but felt a surge of relief seeing them. James trailed behind, carrying a small potted plant from the gift shop downstairs, price tag still attached. We have made our decision, Mom announced without preamble, setting her purse on the visitor chair instead of sitting down. We are keeping our Italy plans. The statement hung in the air, so blunt that for a moment I thought I had misheard through my medication fog. But I just had major surgery, I said, my voice sounding small and far away. Dad stepped forward, assuming his reasonable tone that he used when explaining why James deserved another chance at something. We looked into it, but we cannot get refunds at this point. All those expenses would go to waste. The expenses I had paid for. The $12,000 that had come from my account. Besides, Mom added, we have been planning this for so long. James has been studying Italian cuisine, and he has a whole list of restaurants he wants to visit. James nodded enthusiastically. I cannot wait to see the Colosseum. Did you know gladiators used to fight there? So cool. The superficiality of his comment against the backdrop of my medical situation was jarring. My leg was immobilized with pins holding the bones together, my breathing was still labored from the punctured lung, and my brother was excited about ancient sporting venues. But who will help me when I get discharged? I asked. The doctor said I will need full-time assistance for weeks. Mom waved her hand dismissively. You have that good job with those benefits. Hire someone. There are services for this sort of thing. Or maybe a friend can help, Dad suggested, though he could not name a single one of my friends if asked. We will call when we can. Mom promised, already gathering her purse, signaling the end of their visit. International calls are expensive, but we will check in. They stayed less than 15 minutes. As they turned to leave, James looked back from the doorway. Heal fast, sis. I will bring you a souvenir magnet or something. The contrast between the magnitude of my needs and the triviality of his offer left me speechless. Saturday arrived, the day of their departure. Nurse Brenda came into my room to find me quietly crying as I scrolled through my phone, looking at the airport selfie my family had just posted on social media. Rome bound. Read the caption under their smiling faces, not a hint of concern visible. Your family left for vacation? After your accident? Brenda asked, her professional demeanor slipping momentarily to reveal genuine shock. Italy, I confirmed, trying to keep my voice neutral. They had it planned for months. Brenda's lips pressed into a thin line as she checked my phone. In 30 years of nursing, I have seen all kinds of family dynamics, but this. She trailed off, perhaps remembering professional boundaries. From the next bed, Kelly was less restrained. That is messed up, Audrey. Like, seriously wrong. No one deserves to be treated that way by their own family. The physical pain of my injuries seemed to intensify with the emotional abandonment. Every movement sent shooting pain through my leg. Each breath remained labored from my healing lung, and now a new ache had taken residence in my chest, one no pain medication could touch. Still, I tried rationalizing their behavior. They had been looking forward to this trip. James rarely showed interest in anything educational like historical sites. Mom had been talking about authentic Italian cuisine for months. Dad needed a break from his retirement boredom. I repeated these excuses in my mind like a mantra, trying to dull the hurt. The voicemail arrived Sunday evening, about 24 hours after their departure. I was alone in the room, Kelly having been discharged that morning. I saw Mom's name on the caller ID and felt a wave of relief that they had arrived safely and were thinking of me. I pressed play and put the phone on speaker since moving to hold it to my ear was still difficult. "Audrey, we have arrived in Rome." Mom's voice sounded cheerful and carefree. "The hotel is gorgeous. Thanks to you. The lobby has this beautiful marble fountain, and our suite has a view of the city. James already found a gelato place nearby. Your father is loving the complimentary wine service." I waited for questions about my condition, about the surgery, about my pain levels or recovery progress. Instead, what came next knocked the breath from my healing lungs. "We will be very busy with tours and activities every day," she continued, her tone shifting to something more businesslike. "We have a packed itinerary, so do not bother calling us while we are here. The time difference would make it inconvenient anyway. We will call when we can if we find free time." In the background, I could hear Dad and James laughing about something, their voices light and celebratory. "James, what restaurant did you book for dinner?" Mom asked, moving away from the phone but still audible. "The concierge recommended that place with the famous carbonara." The message ended without so much as a "hope you are feeling better" or "we miss you." Not even a perfunctory "love you" before hanging up. I replayed the message 3 times, each repetition making the words, "do not bother calling us," cut deeper. Tears came in a flood that I could not stop, pulling painfully at the stitches on my face, the sobs aggravating my broken ribs until I had to press the morphine pump for relief. Nurse Brenda found me this way during her rounds. Without a word, she sat on the edge of the bed and held my hand until the medication took effect and the tears subsided. "Family should never make you feel this way," she said finally, her voice gentle but firm. "Never." Later that evening, my friend Sarah called to check on me. When I told her about the voicemail, her usual diplomatic tone vanished. "That is it, Audrey. I have kept quiet too long out of respect for your family, but this crosses every line. They take your money for luxury trips while you work 60-hour weeks, then abandon you in the hospital and tell you not to call them? This has to stop." For the first time, something inside me whispered that maybe she was right. The next few days in the hospital became a period of painful reflection, both physically and emotionally. My roommate Kelly had been replaced by an elderly woman named Dorothy recovering from hip surgery, who turned out to be a retired family therapist with keen insights. "Your family situation reminds me of something we used to discuss in my practice," she mentioned one afternoon after hearing me try to explain my parents' behavior to a confused nurse. "It sounds like a classic case of family role entrenchment. You became the provider, the responsible one, while your brother remained the eternal child needing support. Parents often enable these dynamics without realizing the harm." Her words lingered with me long after our conversation. That evening, Sarah visited, bringing home cooked food to supplement the bland hospital meals. After catching me up on outside world news, she shifted to a more serious tone. "I need to say something as your friend of 15 years, she began. "This family situation is abusive, Audrey. Financially and emotionally abusive. If this were a romantic relationship, everyone would tell you to run. Why is it different because they are family?" I started to offer my usual defenses about family obligation and cultural expectations, but Sarah gently cut me off. "No more excuses. Calculate how much money you have given them in the past year alone. Then ask yourself if they would do the same for you. Would they put their lives on hold for 3 months to help you recover? Because that is what you are facing without their help." The question hung in the air, uncomfortable but impossible to ignore. The truth was, I already knew the answer. Nurse Brenda became another unexpected source of wisdom during her care routines. As she helped me with the painful process of moving from bed to chair for the first time since surgery, she shared her own experience. My sister was like your brother, always needing bailouts. Never responsible. For years I enabled her, thinking I was helping. One day my husband asked why my sister's emergencies were always more important than our family's needs. That question changed everything. She adjusted my leg brace carefully before continuing. I established boundaries. It was hard. She was furious. Our parents called me selfish. But 10 years later, guess what? My sister finally grew up when she had to. She manages her own life now, and our relationship is healthier than ever. The most unexpected perspective came from my colleague Patricia, who video called to update me on work matters. After business discussion, she hesitated, then said, "Audrey, our team has noticed something concerning. Every family emergency requiring your immediate financial attention seems to coincide with your successes at work. Your promotion, the Henderson account, your quarterly bonus, each time. Your family suddenly needs major financial help. It seems calculated." I had never noticed this pattern, but once Patricia pointed it out, the examples flooded my mind. My promotion celebration dinner canceled because James needed bail money after a bar fight. My quarterly bonus diverted to pay for Mom's spontaneous kitchen renovation. The raise that immediately translated to a higher monthly loan to my parents. That night, alone with these new perspectives circling in my mind, I made a decision. Using my laptop, I began investigating my financial entanglements with my family more thoroughly than ever before. What I discovered shocked even me, who thought I understood the situation. Over the past 3 years, I had provided my family with over $150,000 in direct financial support. Monthly transfers for their mortgage and utilities, credit card payments, car loans, property taxes, home repairs, travel expenses, James's failed business ventures, medical bills not covered by their insurance. The list seemed endless. Beyond regular expenses, I found numerous large withdrawals from my checking account made by my parents using the authorized user access I had granted them for emergencies only. The most recent was particularly stunning. An additional $5,000 withdrawal made the day before they left for Italy, labeled simply as spending money. This was on top of the prepaid tours, accommodations, and business class airfare I had already provided. The credit card statements revealed another layer of exploitation. A shopping spree before their trip included new luggage, designer clothing, electronics, and even a $1,000 camera for James to document their travels. All charged to the card I paid for, mere days after my accident. As I scrolled through years of bank statements, a cold clarity washed over me. This was not occasional family assistance. This was systematic financial exploitation that had gradually escalated to staggering proportions. I had been bankrolling a lifestyle for 3 adults who contributed nothing in return, not even basic compassion when I was injured and vulnerable. The social worker assigned to my case, Beth, visited the next morning to discuss discharge planning. When I hesitantly shared some of my family situation, her professional demeanor could not completely mask her concern. "What you are describing represents a serious imbalance in family dynamics," she said carefully. "I would strongly recommend speaking with a therapist who specializes in family systems and financial abuse. In the meantime, please consider that healthy support goes both ways. Relationships should not consistently deplete one party to sustain the others." She provided resources on setting boundaries and recommended specific therapists. Before leaving, she added, "Recovery requires both physical and emotional healing. Sometimes the hardest part is recognizing which relationships support your recovery and which impede it." That afternoon, while working through painful physical therapy exercises with my therapist Ryan, I experienced a moment of clarity. As I struggled to lift my leg just a few inches, sweat beading on my forehead from the effort, Ryan encouraged me. This is how healing works. Small, painful steps that accumulate over time. But you have to stop behaviors that cause damage before healing can truly begin. His words, though meant for physical recovery, resonated on a deeper level. I had been financially bleeding out for years, and the first step to healing was stopping the hemorrhage. That evening, I sat in my hospital bed, leg elevated, face still stitched, ribs aching with each breath, and made the decision that would change everything. The family who had told me, "Do not bother calling us," would soon discover exactly what that meant. The morning after my revelation, I placed a video call to Susan Henderson, an attorney who specialized in financial cases. From my hospital bed, I explained my situation as clearly and objectively as possible, presenting the financial records I had compiled. "So your parents and brother are currently in Italy on a vacation you paid for, after abandoning you following a serious car accident and explicitly told you not to contact them," Susan summarized, her professional tone not quite masking her disapproval. "And you want to disentangle yourself financially without creating legal vulnerability." "Exactly," I confirmed. "I have been supporting them for years, but there were no formal agreements. Just my name on accounts, cards I pay for, and regular transfers I initiated." Susan nodded, taking notes. "From what you have described, these were gifts, not loans. Since you never established repayment terms, that works in your favor for separation, but means recovery of funds is unlikely. Let me outline a strategy for financial disentanglement." Over the next hour, we developed a comprehensive plan. Susan explained that I had every legal right to remove financial access I had previously granted. We documented the history of support, created records of all joint accounts and authorized user arrangements, and outlined a step-by-step approach to separation. "One final question," Susan asked. "Are you prepared for the emotional fallout?" Financial changes often trigger strong reactions, especially in relationships with established patterns of dependency. I thought about my broken body, the voicemail telling me not to call, the years of emotional neglect disguised as family loyalty. "Yes," I answered with newfound resolve. "I am ready." Immediately after our consultation, I began implementing our plan. First, I contacted my bank to freeze all joint accounts and remove my parents as authorized users. The customer service representative expressed concern when I explained I was calling from a hospital bed, making the process surprisingly smooth. "We see financial exploitation of family members more often than you might think," she explained. "We have protocols for these situations." Next, I changed passwords on all financial portals, setting up two-factor authentication tied only to my personal devices. I methodically removed my parents and brother as authorized users on my credit cards, a process that took several calls and verification steps. With primary access points secured, I moved to the next phase, establishing new accounts they could not access. I transferred my remaining funds to these new accounts, leaving the minimum required balance in the old accounts to avoid overdraft fees while outstanding charges cleared. The most challenging part was documenting everything methodically despite pain medication making me occasionally fuzzy. My nurse noticed my intense focus and brought me extra water and a small whiteboard to help track completion of each step. With my personal finances secured, I turned to the strategic consequences Susan and I had discussed. These were not punitive measures, but necessary steps to establish clear boundaries and end the cycle of dependency. First, I canceled the return flight tickets I had purchased for my family. A quick call to the airline, explanation of my situation, and verification of my identity was all it took. "The reservation has been canceled, Ms. Hamilton," the agent confirmed. "No further action is needed on your part." Next, I sent an email to their hotel in Rome, politely explaining that the payment method on file would no longer be valid for any charges beyond their current prepaid stay. I authorized payment for the nights already booked, but removed my card as the payment method for any extensions or incidentals. The automatic payments I had set up for my parents' mortgage, utilities, cell phone plan, and various subscriptions required individual attention. For each, I completed the necessary steps to stop payments while documenting the final payment dates for my records. One by one, I contacted credit card companies where I served as guarantor for my parents' accounts, removing myself from that responsibility. This will not affect existing balances, a representative explained, but they will not be able to make new charges without updating their account information. Throughout this process, I experienced conflicting emotions. Guilt surfaced occasionally, the programming of a lifetime not easily erased. But alongside it grew something stronger, a sense of liberation. Each severed financial tie felt like removing a weight I had carried so long I had forgotten it was there. As I worked, my physical recovery continued in parallel. The first physical therapy session after surgery was brutal, leaving me sweating and nauseated from pain. Therapist Ryan was compassionate but firm. "The body heals through controlled stress," he explained. "We have to push just enough to stimulate healing without causing damage." Small victories emerged from the painful work. Bending my knee 5 more degrees than yesterday. Sitting upright for 30 minutes without dizziness. Standing with the walker for a full minute. Each achievement, however minor it might seem to an able-bodied person, represented triumph over trauma. Nurse Brenda continued providing exceptional care, becoming something of a surrogate mother figure during my hospital stay. "You are doing more than healing bones," she observed while changing my surgical dressings. "You are rebuilding your life foundation." Both processes require similar things: patience, persistence, and removing dead tissue that prevents healing. Discharge planning began in earnest. My friend Sarah offered her guest room for my recovery. A space already on the first floor with an adjacent bathroom. "I work from home 3 days a week," she pointed out, "so I can help with basic needs. We can arrange professional home health care for the medical aspects." With Sarah's generous offer and my new financial independence, I began coordinating with Beth, the social worker, to arrange professional home health services. "Insurance will cover skilled nursing visits and some therapy," she explained, "but you will need additional support for daily activities." The costs would be substantial, but now that I was no longer supporting 3 additional adults, I could comfortably afford the care I needed. This realization brought another wave of clarity. I had been neglecting my own needs to meet theirs for so long that prioritizing my health felt almost transgressive. By the 5th day of my parents' trip, I had completed every item on the financial separation checklist Susan and I had created. My family remained blissfully unaware, posting daily photos of Roman holidays, extravagant meals, and tourist attractions. Not once had they called to check on my recovery progress. Nurse Brenda found me reviewing my completed checklist that evening. "You look different," she observed. "More at peace." "I am," I admitted. "I just established the boundaries I should have set years ago." "Good for you," she replied, adjusting my fore. "Now comes the hard part. Maintaining those boundaries when they start pushing back. Because they will." She was right, of course. The peaceful interlude was about to end. The storm would arrive when my family discovered their financial reality had fundamentally changed, and I needed to be mentally prepared for the onslaught while focusing on my physical recovery. The next morning, I received notification that my family had attempted to make a significant charge at their hotel. The text alert from my credit card company confirmed the transaction had been declined. It was beginning. The first call came at 2:17 in the morning, exactly when my parents would have been wide awake in the Italian afternoon. Mom's name flashed on my phone screen as it vibrated against the hospital bedside table. I watched it ring until voicemail picked up, then listened to the message. "Audrey, something strange is happening with the hotel payment. They're saying our card was declined. Call me immediately to sort this out." Her tone held confusion rather than anger. She had not yet realized what was happening. 37 minutes later, Dad called. His voicemail was less measured. "The credit card company says I am no longer an authorized user on the account. This must be a mistake. Call the bank immediately and fix this. We have dinner reservations at that Michelin star restaurant tonight." By morning, the messages had escalated in both frequency and tone. James sent a text at what would have been 4 a.m. my time. "WTF sis? Hotel says we need another payment method. Fix it now." Throughout that day, the calls and messages accumulated, the progression of emotion following a predictable path: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, Attempts at manipulation. Mom's voice trembled in her third message. Audrey, if this is intentional, I cannot believe you would do this to your family. After everything we have done for you. The irony of that statement might have made me laugh if it were not so painfully revealing of the distorted family narrative. By afternoon, I had 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. I silenced notifications from their numbers and focused on my physical therapy session, where I managed to stand with crutches for the first time since the accident. That evening, I composed a single text message in response to the barrage, as requested in your voicemail. I am not bothering you during your vacation. Enjoy Rome. I added the Italian flag emoji, then hit send. Within minutes, my phone exploded with incoming calls. I returned to silent mode and drafted a brief email outlining the financial changes I had made. The tone was businesslike, without justification or apology. This email confirms that I have removed all authorized users from my financial accounts, canceled automatic payments previously established for your expenses, and removed myself as guarantor on your credit accounts. This arrangement is permanent. I wish you a pleasant remainder of your trip. For any further communication on this matter, please contact my attorney, Susan Henderson, at the email address below. I set my phone to do not disturb mode, allowing only calls from medical contacts and a few close friends to come through. The hospital room felt suddenly peaceful, my breathing easier despite my healing lung, as if the financial cords I had cut had also been physical constraints around my chest. The next morning brought the expected escalation. My parents had contacted my mother's sister, Aunt Carol, who left a lengthy voicemail about family loyalty and how disappointed she was in my behavior. Uncle William, Dad's brother, sent a text message suggesting I would regret alienating family and might need them someday. James took a different approach, posting a lengthy social media rant portraying himself as the victim of an unreasonable sister who abandoned her family in a foreign country out of spite. The post received little engagement, as most of his social media connections were aware of our family dynamics. Most manipulative was my mother's email claiming they might be stranded in a foreign country without funds to return home. This ignored several realities: their own savings accounts I had never had access to, my father's pension payments, and the multiple credit cards in their names alone. They were not destitute. They simply no longer had access to my income. I forwarded all communications to Susan, who responded with a formal letter to my family. The document was a masterpiece of professional boundary setting, listing in clinical detail the financial support I had provided over the years, with exact figures, explaining that these had been gifts rather than obligations, and clearly stating terms for any future relationship. The letter concluded, Ms. Hamilton is open to rebuilding a relationship based on mutual respect and appropriate boundaries. She will not, however, resume financial support or tolerate emotional manipulation. Any further attempts to involve extended family members or social pressure will result in temporary cessation of all contact. My final personal response was a brief email. I respected your request not to call you during your vacation. I am permanently honoring that wish in a broader sense. Please direct all communication through Susan until you are ready to establish a healthier relationship. With that, I turned my full attention to my physical recovery, which would require all my energy and focus in the coming weeks. The emotional storm would continue to rage, but I had removed myself from its path. For perhaps the first time, I was prioritizing my own healing above my family's demands. The day before my hospital discharge, Nurse Brenda sat with me during her break. Family estrangement is more common than people realize, she said gently. Sometimes distance is the only way to heal. Just remember that boundaries are not punishments. They are the foundation of healthy relationships. Her words stayed with me as I prepared to leave the hospital and begin the next phase of recovery, one that would involve healing much more than just broken bones. 10 days after my surgery, I was discharged from the hospital to begin outpatient recovery. Sarah had transformed her guest house into a temporary rehabilitation space, adding grab bars in the bathroom, renting a hospital bed, and creating clear pathways for my walker and eventual crutches. The small cottage behind her main home offered both proximity for assistance and privacy for healing. "Welcome to your recovery sanctuary," Sarah said as she wheeled me inside. Independence with backup support, just the right balance. The physical recovery journey intensified once I left the hospital. Daily physical therapy sessions with Ryan focused on rebuilding strength and mobility. Each session pushed my limits, leaving me exhausted but incrementally stronger. "The femur bears more weight than any other bone," Ryan explained during one particularly challenging session. "When it breaks, the surrounding muscles atrophy incredibly quickly. We are essentially rebuilding your leg from the inside out." The first major milestone came 3 weeks post-surgery when I managed 5 steps without the walker, using only crutches. Sarah documented the moment with a photo that captured both my grimace of pain and smile of triumph. Small victories accumulated: showering independently, cooking a simple meal while seated, navigating the short garden path between the guest house and main home. While my body healed, I consciously built a genuine support network for the first time. Sarah and her husband John included me in their family dinners twice weekly, conversations flowing naturally without the undercurrent of obligation I had always felt with my parents. Nurse Brenda visited on her days off, bringing homemade soup and professional advice about wound care. We discovered shared interests in mystery novels and gardening, our relationship evolving from caregiver-patient to genuine friendship. The trauma support group Beth recommended met virtually every Thursday evening. Listening to others navigate recovery from various traumas provided perspective and community. Melissa, recovering from a workplace accident, became a text message buddy for late nights when pain prevented sleep. Carlos, healing from a climbing fall, shared physical therapy hacks that helped manage muscle spasms. An unexpected connection came from my cousin Lindsay, who reached out after seeing James's social media posts about being abandoned in Italy. I experienced something similar with Uncle Harold and Aunt Margaret, she revealed during our first phone call. When I needed help during my divorce, they made it clear that only certain types of family crises deserve support. Anything that contradicted their worldview was considered self-inflicted. Lindsay and I had been close as children before family dynamics pulled us apart in adolescence. Reconnecting as adults, we discovered similar experiences of conditional love and financial manipulation. Our regular conversations became a safe space to untangle family patterns without judgment. Another unexpected development was my friendship with David, Sarah's neighbor who frequently walked his golden retriever past the guest house. Our first interaction occurred when I dropped my crutch while attempting to water the potted plants outside my door. He retrieved it without making me feel helpless, then returned the next day with an ingenious reaching tool he had modified specifically for someone on crutches. David's kindness came without expectations, a novel experience that highlighted how transactional my family relationships had been. When he brought over homemade pasta or offered to pick up prescriptions, there were no mental tallies, no future obligations created, just genuine support freely given. 6 weeks after my family's departure for Italy, they returned to the United States. Getting back had apparently required selling some personal items and accepting economy seats with multiple layovers, a far cry from the business class direct flights I had originally purchased. They arrived at my temporary residence unannounced one afternoon. I was alone, practicing walking with a single crutch, when the doorbell rang. Opening the door revealed my parents and James standing there, faces set in expressions ranging from indignation to manufactured concern. "You look terrible," was my mother's greeting, her eyes cataloging the surgical scar visible below my shorts, the fading bruises on my arms, the crutch supporting my weight. "Actually, I am doing quite well according to my doctors," I replied calmly. "What brings you here?" "We need to talk about what you did," my father stated, attempting to step inside. I remained in the doorway. "I am happy to talk, but not today and not without preparation. Susan can arrange a mediated conversation when I am ready." "Susan? You are still hiding behind that lawyer," James scoffed. "This is family business." "Yes. It is family business, I agreed. And I am still family, despite being told not to bother you during your vacation and being left alone after a major accident. Family works both ways. Mom's expression shifted to the hurt look that had historically preceded my capitulation to whatever she wanted. How could you do this to us? After everything we have sacrificed for you? In that moment, I felt an unusual sensation, complete emotional clarity. Their manipulation tactics were suddenly transparent, like watching a familiar play where I could anticipate every line before it was spoken. I am still recovering from major trauma, I said evenly. This is not the time for this conversation. I will contact you when I am ready to discuss establishing a new, healthier relationship. Until then, please respect my boundaries. I closed the door gently but firmly, then leaned against it. Heart pounding but resolve intact. Through the door, I heard brief argument before footsteps retreated. For the first time in my adult life, I had set a boundary with my family and maintained it despite direct pressure. The weeks that followed brought sporadic contact attempts, each less demanding than the last as my family gradually realized the old patterns would not resume. My father sent an email acknowledging that perhaps we have taken your support for granted at times. Mom left a voicemail mentioning they were adjusting to a new budget. James texted that he had found part-time work at a local restaurant. Small steps. Not apologies or genuine recognition of the dysfunctional dynamic, but movement away from entitlement toward reality. 3 months after the accident, I began therapy with Dr. Amy Richards, specializing in family trauma. Our weekly sessions helped me recognize patterns established in childhood that had carried into my adult relationships. Your worth was tied to what you provided, not who you are, Dr. Richards observed during one particularly insightful session. That creates a dangerous template for all relationships. Part of healing is recognizing your inherent value separate from achievement or giving. This perspective transformed my understanding of not just family dynamics, but also workplace relationships and friendships. I began practicing saying no without explanation or guilt. I expressed preferences without automatically deferring to others. I recognized when professional colleagues attempted to exploit my tendency to overfunction. My physical recovery progressed alongside the emotional work. For months post-accident, I returned to work part-time, initially remote and then hybrid as my mobility improved. Colleagues who had known the always available, Audrey adjusted to new boundaries around my time and energy. Most surprisingly, my career benefited rather than suffered. My work gained focus and efficiency when I stopped trying to be everything to everyone. 6 months after the accident, I walked unassisted for the first time, managing the entire length of Sarah's garden without support. The moment symbolized more than physical healing. It represented independence reclaimed on multiple levels. Around the 8-month mark, I agreed to a family dinner at a neutral restaurant. The conversation was awkward but civil. My parents mentioned financial challenges adjusting to living within their actual means. James discussed his new job and apartment share. No one directly acknowledged the dramatic shift in dynamics, but their behavior reflected awareness that the old patterns were permanently broken. Near the anniversary of my accident, I moved back to my own apartment, modified for my continuing mobility needs. My support network helped with the transition, Sarah organizing the moving logistics, Ryan advising on home adaptations for ongoing recovery, David assembling furniture suitable for someone with lingering physical limitations. The contrast between this genuine community support and my family's abandonment during crisis could not have been starker. The most profound change was internal. I no longer measured my worth by what I provided to others or how much I achieved professionally. Relationships became genuine connections rather than transactions. Setting boundaries became natural rather than guilt-inducing. As I reflect now on that devastating accident and its aftermath, I recognize a truth that once would have seemed impossible. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you creates the opening for the best things to enter your life. The crash that broke my bones ultimately freed me from patterns that had broken my spirit for decades. That voicemail, "Do not bother calling us," intended as casual dismissal, became the catalyst for reclaiming my life. By honoring their request in ways they never anticipated, I found my voice, my boundaries, and ultimately my freedom. If you are watching this and recognize similar patterns in your own relationships, remember that boundaries are not selfish, they are necessary for genuine connection. Financial support that creates dependency is not generosity, it is often control disguised as care. And sometimes, the family you choose becomes more important than the family you were born into. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? What helped you find the courage? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about reclaiming personal power. Thank you for listening to my journey from brokenness to breakthrough. And remember, sometimes healing requires letting go of what keeps breaking you.